the Horsch company is probably not the history of a typical agricultural machinery manufacturer. It is the story actually of a farmer's dynasty or farming group, which goes back in the generation of my fathers and also the fathers of my other two companions in the company, which is Michael and Philip. And it started out of the wish of these farmers, which were cooperating very much within each other, to change their farming practices. There are actually a little bit of similarities to the starts of the no-till movement here in Brazil back in the 70s. Actually, we are even talking of nearly the same time frame, maybe in Germany a little bit earlier. So the Horsch family group was actually from the farming side the leading group in trying to change farming practices towards more sustainable farming, lower cost farming, and we are talking of a time where there was no Roundup even existing. Nobody was talking of min-till or no-till, and there was no machinery available. And in this pioneer context, my cousin Michael grew up on a farm, a family farm, and was basically from the beginning inspired by this spirit. And Michael is an empirical engineer, so he's a dropout of school, and he was only actually interested in on the technical sides empirically. He did not study it or whatsoever, and started to try to meet the expectations of the bigger family, well, to get a machine who works in for no-till. And so actually in the farm shed of his father, he started, and formally the company, the Horsch Machinery Company, was founded in '84. So it was Michael on the one hand side, and it was my father, who was close to go into retirement, and he always organized the Horsch family group with different company activities. So we were in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, one of the biggest egg producers in Germany. And out of this business background, so he gave a little bit the backing, because of course there was no bank that would have ever lent to my cousin one German mark, because it was too risky. So actually in the beginning it was facilitating machinery to the family members and trying to sell the machine. The challenging point was, if you go back to the history of a John Deere, or in Germany maybe a Lemken company or so, it was basically an entrepreneur, maybe a blacksmith, who looked what the farmers are needing, and he built it, and he sold it to the farmers. In our case, it was a little bit more difficult, because we built machine for a farming practice which nobody used, nobody needed, and nobody wanted. So when the family customer were attended, we had something to sell which now nobody wanted. So in order to sell, we had to make educational marketing and convincing the farmer, well, change your farming practices. And this was maybe a little bit more difficult in the European context of our ecosystem or agro-system than it was in Brazil, because in Brazil, I think once having found a solution, whether it was the Dijkstra family or the other pioneers, it was paying back very quickly. Well, Planquillo Directo, Cultivo de Cobertura was working and paid back. It was not so in Europe. because we are on winter crops. We have more problems with diseases overtake, and the immediate advantages of no-till are not so paying back so quickly. So we had a very, very hard time in the beginning. Uh, the good thing was that we always were orientated with our engineering and what we are doing to the bigger farming operations. So very quickly and early, we looked also for other markets. And there was one historic event which was crucial for the Horsch company, probably as important as nobody else in the machinery, and that was the opening of the East, the falling of the Berlin Wall. We were actually in the eastern part of Germany, southeastern part, and we were actually landlocked. So there was communist East Germany in the north, there was communist Czech Republic in the east, so that was, we were outlocked until we had to look for other markets, and suddenly this was open. And the good thing of the leftover of communist rule was that they made big fields. In Europe, we had traditionally small fields, because after the generation dividing land, there were small pieces. And suddenly there was the communist countries which big areas, big fields, and we had the machinery. Yeah. So we thought easy deal, and yet we grew, but we had to go through a couple of obstacles because our machinery in the beginning, they did not stand these operations of working suddenly instead of 50 hectares, 500 hectares or 1,000 hectares. So it was a hard learning curve. But that is actually the DNA of the Horsch company. So we are coming from the farming side, and we dream certain things. We think we have a certain capacity to see trends which are coming, and then we are building the machinery out of our own farming expertise, either of our own or by our cousins, uncles, whatsoever the wider family group. And that is why Horsch happened to grow. We were the trendsetter for minimum tillage, no tillage applications in Europe, even though we also went into tillage, but not the traditional way of tillage. And so what became the trend in Europe, starting in the late 90s, we did already before, and we were seen as the trendsetter for it. Yeah? And in the beginning, we were nearly the only one who concentrated also on these machines. Our competition concentrated more on the traditional farming methods. Yeah? And so we were growing. Yeah? And we are probably now, in terms of product diversity, the highest specialized company, I would say, worldwide. So we are not interested in building tractors. We're also not interested in building combines, but we want to serve with everything else to the farmers with modern machinery. So we are in the time where I told you when the opening of the East started, so we were maybe a company this time of maybe with 50 employees, maybe invoicing 10 million euros. Yeah. So we are growing probably this year in the dimension of 1 billion. So we are employing over 3,000 people. We are manufacturing in different parts of the world. And luckily, we decided, well, I'm observing South America, especially Brazil and Argentina, since about 20 years. And it was actually on a agri show which I visited with my cousin Philip. I think that was in 2013. I'm not quite sure. We looked around and said, well, now it's time. So we are ready, because we also uh, got deeper in plantaderas, which we did not have in the very beginning. Brazil developed from this multi-machinery, 10, 100 horsepower tractors in the field with planters behind. The tractors became bigger, and so the time became ripe, and we took the decision. And our approach to a new market is not by acquisition. That is against our DNA, because we cannot buy a company, let us say a Brazilian company, uh, giving it our color and naming it our, and then we are here. Yeah? So we can only, I think, be successful in the market if we do our thing. That means adapt machineries to the conditions here with the experience that we have in other markets, uh, and learning what is required here. Additionally, I think we have a very good ability to connect directly to high professional farmers everywhere in the world, and they see in us not only a manufacturer who wants to sell iron, so they see us as a competent partner to discuss issues, and that worked extremely well in Brazil. The other advantage is that we found in Curitiba also a German-speaking community, where we recruited our key people, and it was a hard way. It was a long way. I think in 2017 we built, was it 16 or 17? We built the first 3 local built machines in Brazil. So we started very small, and we are proud, having inaugurated 2 weeks ago our new site. And this is actually the biggest investment in our company in history in one place. We never did this before. We have 6 other manufacturing plants, but this is not the biggest in terms of actual production, but in capacity it is. And I think we will be able to make Curitiba in a couple of years as our biggest production place. Yeah? And of course, the changes in Europe, which affected us very much. Ukraine, Russia, Belarus was for us an important market, a very important market. We were absolutely market leader in Ukraine. And so luckily we started earlier in Brazil. And our motivation to start in Brazil was not in first case, okay, let's go to Brazil. There are so many hectares, we want to make money there. Our motivation was, our heart starts beating if you are in a Brazilian field. If you talk to a Brazilian farmer, the high professionality of Brazilian farmers, I think the changes that happened in Brazil in these last 10 years, we have to see this in a historical scale. I was saying, yesterday at the discussion, it happened to me, this meaning. You know what? The biggest change, speaking in mechanized farming industry, probably that happened in the United States in the change of the 19th to 20th century. And that gave the path to modern farming practices for all over the world. I would say, I pretend to say that what happened in Brazil during the last 10-15 years and what is going on the next 10-15 years has a similar historical dimension, and that will not happen anywhere else in the world, because in the US they are stacked there. There is no more growth. They have their farming structure. They are good and whatsoever, but the revolutionary changes which are implanted by entrepreneurs with. And I'm not only speaking of the big groups. I'm speaking of these farmers of 5,000 hectares, 10,000, 20 hectares, who are building their own factories on the farms for biological treatments. This is in Europe. They are making still trials on in the scale of greenhouses. Yeah, talking 30 years about this. Yeah, and here it's done, and it's not done on small scale. It's done on thousands of hectares, and that is what fascinates us. To participate, to be part of this. So this is actually more. This is a decision made by the three owners of the Horsch company and not by their CFO. If the CFO would have the saying in our company, we never ever. Yeah? Because so far the return on capital, that is not so fantastic. Yeah? But we see that is the right way to go, and we want to be here. And that motivated us to be here in Brazil. And we think that Brazil or South America, which is principally Brazil, will be a very, very, very important part of our company in 4 or 5 years, not only turnover wise, but also technology leading wise. Yeah? So we are not here, we are not manufacturing here something which is designed in Europe. Of course, there's a coordination, but we have here a autonomous, very big engineering team, yeah, which is 2-digit, and it's growing, and they are, and we are starting in the company group to divide competences now also, and there are things happening in Brazil that will be transformed worldwide also in our organization. This is small at the moment, but that will become in the other years different. And in this sense, I think we are also thinking maybe a little bit different as the other big players, because our interest is in the medium term, not taking out dividends or whatsoever out of Brazil. We want to see it grow. Yeah. Yes, maybe we want that they pay back the debt back of it, but we do not want to see dividends here for the shareholders that which are we. Yeah? You can only grow this if you reinvest, and to reinvest it with the mentality of a family company, and this is not driven by the expectations on quarterly reports or what foreign investors might say, yeah, okay, expectation not met, yeah, and the growth is down. We are not interested in that. Yeah, we are interested to see. Yes, we want an important market position. Yeah, of course we want to see certain numbers, but our motivation is to see it grow. Yeah, and that is, and I dare to say we know well the professional farming world over the world. Yeah? Because we communicate as we communicate here to farmers. We did it in Russia, we do it in Kazakhstan, we do it in Ukraine, we do it in Germany, in France, in England, or in the US. And Brazil is exceptional. And Brazil is also exceptional, and that is something which we are very surprised, because of course as Germans, Europeans, we think, well, we are the champions, yeah, and we are going to Brazil, and okay, let us show it to them. We have a dynamic team here, which I would like to have this dynamic in Germany. We got a little bit lazy, yeah, a little bit. I do not. Our people in Germany, in France, they are excellent, but it's exceptional. The motivation, the spirit of work, and everything, and all the prejudices that you have as a European towards Brazil. It's at least not true with our people in Curitiba, and which we have in the field here in Brazil. So we are very enthusiastic. I'm aware that we have now in Brazil, I think already, since when was the last crisis? 2015 or 16. So we have 5-6 years in a row, yeah, only with going up, so that there will be other times, but it, if I think if you want to be as a company in the leading world where the music in agriculture plays, you have to be in Brazil. And if you are not in Brazil, and meaning in Brazil is not selling a product in Brazil. That is not the point. The point is being in Brazil, participating in it, being a partnering with the different stakeholders. Whether this is our suppliers, who grow with us, who change with us certain practices, certain technologies. It is our dealers, our distributors. I do not want to call them dealers because actually they are their main task is service provider, and that is a difficult task in Brazil with the distances and everything. And we have partners found here which are dedicated and which are doing it. And I should have mentioned this at first. This is our nearly now 300 collaborators in Brazil, which are making out of Horsch what it is. It's not the money that's coming from Horsch. It is the interchange of the people of the Horsch company and the people here who are doing it, and that makes me optimistic. And our ambitions are big. To be here, to stay here, and what we started in Curitiba, that will grow. That I'm sure.